Alright, that's COVID 1984 by Chief Crow and the Flat Earth Worms. Thank you everyone for joining. I just sent out live stream notifications, so if your text messages are blowing up, that's me. So let me go ahead and see who's here. AJ206, Rome. Oh, phones are open by the way. 833-311-1984. I got some voicemails. One of them is kind of not something I can play live, and I have to wonder, what is it with these people who leave messages without bothering to hide their numbers? Tricky Who says Binger was living with the Kenosha judge. Rutro. Please clarify. Please clarify there. I'm still not convinced that Grosskreutz wasn't wearing a squib that day. And hey, we're back on YouTube. I was kind of disappointed I only had one yesterday after they sniped the other three, but no, we have four. So, like I said, we don't back down. We don't really care about melting snowflakes. I'm not even convinced that they feel anything. I kind of think it's all just a ruse to control our behavior. Kind of like, basic manipulation 101. Fake tears. Are we falling for crisis actors? Crisis actor snowflakes? I think so. Now, if you are a snowflake, and we've melted you down a few times, I have to ask you, why are you even listening? P-Trippa103 says, replay, I'm so behind. I miss fringing about things. Yes, this is as fringe as it gets. And unlike the other fringe, the controlled opposition, you might mix them up with us. You might say, well, what's the difference? You guys are all selling the same crazy. No, the truth is, we're facing 180 degrees from center. They're facing in because their goal is to keep you on the world stage. We're like, no, the world stage is a stage. And this is an important point, and you can't really overstate the importance of this in forming your worldview. There is the real world, so I'm not a denialist, but then there is also a construct that's been superimposed over our reality, and in this construct you have many events that didn't happen as advertised, conditions that don't exactly exist as they would have you believe. So in other words, you have a world of lies. We were born into a global doomsday cult. And if you leave that cult, you can see there's actually two distinct world views. Molly Rowland says, I like being on the fringe as much as I like a big squeeze of horse paste. I just watched a Tim Pool, Alex Jones, and Joe Rogan and Blair Watson live stream. They were in the back of a trailer. I guess Joe Rogan is about to go do a live comedy thing, so he invites Alex Jones over, and they're hanging out with Tim Pool talking about the horse paste and how the media just intentionally got it wrong. I mean, this is what I mean by gatekeepers. Like, sure, the media gets it wrong, but they still think the world's a spinning ball. Now, you may just want to know where your evidence comes from. Let's start with that. By the way, I was bringing up the moon hoax debate with Mick Toon and Alex Stein. A couple of unsavory characters. I mean, each side thinks the other side is just the worst person in the world. Well, anyway, I've been following their Twitter spat, and it's actually getting pretty good. So we'll probably go through that. I also want to point out that the QAnoners who were waiting for the arrival of JFK are still there, and they're singing "We Are the World." So I'm going to just go ahead and play this for a moment. Here you can hear true believers in the notion that John F. Kennedy is still alive, surviving his head wound, and he is going to come back and save the world from the deep state. Happening right now. Okay, so some religious chanting, but let me get into the part where they sing. Well, anyway, like let me just describe it. Hundreds of QAnon supporters back in Dallas Dealey's Plaza awaiting JFK's return, singing "We Are the World." It doesn't get any weirder or fringier than this. And we have someone available to us. Alex Stein was actually there meeting with these individuals. It gets a little stranger because they're not just talking about JFK, they're talking about something biblical. I mean, we're talking the Antichrist, Revelations 13:3. You know, the Antichrist gets shot in the head, and the world is bedazzled by the fact that he survives, and then he takes over. Well, that's the story, but they believe that the Bible was twisted and that they were concealing Christ as the Antichrist. So they think that JFK is Jesus, part two, and the Antichrist, but he's the good guy. So, anyway, that's where their heads are at, and they're hanging out in Dallas, right there on the X where Kennedy was shot on November the 22nd, 1963, if you believe that story. Let me go ahead and just go through some things rapid fire here. If anything piques your interest, you can call in. The number is 1-833-311-1984. I have a few voicemails, but like I said, one of them was pretty bad. I don't even want to say what he said. Okay, here's a good one actually. This one has to be sane. I see Chief Crow's mentioned.
You know, sometimes when I can't get my infinite plane radio fix or some rational thought from Tim Osmond, I turn on my Spotify to listen to some Chief Crow and calm my nerves. But you know what happened today? Space is fake AF, auto hoax, and ball earth cults are all X'd. They're gone.
What?
I'm disappointed, Tim.
How did that happen? Ball Earth Cult, Space is Fake, and Auto Hoax are off of Spotify. Shocking. I hope that's not true. I really hope that's not true. Right now, in fact, I'm looking at YouTube. Let me go and do a search. It wouldn't surprise me, actually. This digital book burning is ongoing, and it's probably not going to change. And the word fake is the new F word. Okay, here's Chief Crow's actual channel. Let's go ahead and just play a sample and make sure it's still up. This is Space
Have you ever looked away from
is
Earth
Fake AF.
into the black void?
Because you can see the stars.
Oh yeah.
You know, and
We were never able to see stars from the lunar surface or on the daylight side of the moon.
It's not a black void. I mean, it's black, but there's all kinds of polka dots.
Space is fake AF. Space.
All right, that ought to calm our caller's nerves. It's all there. So just so you know, let me go ahead and close out his message. He says the walls are closing in.
I don't know what I'm going to do. The walls are closing in. I don't know what I'm going to do. The walls are closing in.
No, the walls are not closing in. I will make it a point tonight to download every Chief Crow song and upload it into our Odyssey playlist where it will cycle 24/7. So don't worry about that. Let's see. Pete Trippa says Odyssey won't let me sign in. Okay, if you have any issues with that, I'll try to work with you. But what I will do is anybody who goes to Odyssey tonight will get a moderator wrench, moderator status. Jordan says Don Petit is like Screech. Yeah, Don Petit. Here's why they have Don Petit. If you don't know, he's the guy who has the glasses, and he just says the darndest things. Like, what happens if you have a leak in your capsule? And he's like, well, you got a leak. It's like, that's not an answer, but it suffices, and he's something of a hero. But my thing is with Don Petit is they put him out there as the face of, oh yeah, we lost the technology that can get us back to the moon, because you wouldn't hit a guy with glasses. Like, he's got the least punchable face. You couldn't get mad at someone like Don Petit. He lost the technology that got us to the moon. But that's the face that they put forth to break the news to us that, yeah, we're not going back. Don Petit misplaced it. Silly Don. In fact, I think I actually have a clip of him here. You can see him in the capsule looking like a kid at a McDonald's playground. You know, they have those plastic playgrounds for kids. This is what Don Petit reminds me of. Okay, here he is.
What happens if you get a leak on that? You have a leak.
You have a leak. Anyway, one of my favorite characters in all these bad movies. Salty Siren says Tucker Carlson called Brian Stelton a screeching, crying eunuch. You know, I mentioned Alex Stein, and somebody called Alex Stein the dollar store Tucker Carlson, which I would take that over. I've been called the Steve Ducey of the Steve Ducey of Alex Joneses. I don't know why that's bad necessarily, but. And someone else said that I was like Alex Jones on bad DMT. Okay, let us go ahead and continue. USMC Vet Florida says Mr. Rogers for adults. Oh yeah, Fantasyland for real. It really is. This outer space thing is just so unbelievable. Okay, so let's go ahead and go through the headlines in order here. There's so many things to go through, but someone sent this to me. Something horrific is going to happen on November the 22nd. It's 666 days after Kobe Bryant's death. Okay, so a few things about that. I'm not a big believer in this kind of divination. I mean, what do you call this? But it's becoming very popular. Like, New Age is so different than what it used to be. It's no longer kooky Wiccans. It's everybody. Everybody on Twitter. They're just piecing things together, and just geometric calculators are very common these days. I'm not a believer in like the objective meaning of certain numbers. I just notice patterns, and it does seem, and the evidence supports the notion that the powers that be are in fact a cult that worship the sun at a very minimum, and everything they do is timed with the sun and the main planetary bodies. And it's all encoded into their mumbo jumbo, into their religions. So that much is real. So even though this sounds ridiculous, it actually isn't. For example, let's talk about Kobe Bryant's so-called death. So he supposedly died on January 26, 2020. A couple of things about that. That is the week of all of the major NASA disasters. In the same time of the year, these things all happen. Challenger, and of course you had, let me go ahead and go through the timeline. I have a pretty good Metascript breakdown of all the major space disasters. And that's something that's also going to come up. I've been really thinking about the significance of Jeff Bezos's recent passenger dying in a plane crash, one, and then two, Richard Branson's bike crash the other day. A few things about that really stood out to me. I don't think any of this is real. So here's one of my charts, space age sacrifices. I have a few different charts where I've been kind of putting out in a timeline all the different major events that happen on the world stage that have advanced the space age narrative as we move forward. In fact, using this, we more or less predicted a few things. So for example, we were noting, this is from last year, that 2021 would be the 42nd year since Skylab fell from the sky. And the numbers on these things are just standing out. 7.7 tons. It fell on 7/11/1979. And on the anniversary of its falling, Richard Branson goes to space in his space plane, or what we call space. I mean, you can debate whether they were actually in space, but my point is these events are timed, and they're always timed with such precision that it's very consistent. Their entire cult is based on, well, time control is a huge part of it. So anyway, you have the Challenger explosion in 1986. It explodes 73 seconds into the flight, January 28th. And even Ronald Reagan, when talking about this, mentions the coincidences, how it was 19 years after the Apollo 1 disaster, where those guys burned up in the capsule. So there's that number again, 19, which we see with these generational psyops. COVID-19 is after 19 years of the war on terror. kicked off by 19 hijackers. And it even goes deeper if you go into 19 is AI. So turns out Pearl Harbor was actually called Operation AI. So you have a 19 encoded into it. And now, after COVID-19, the World Economic Forum 666 is talking about the Gaia Initiative, which is the global AI alliance. It's basically handing over power to this AI god, putting it out there. But my point being, the 19, the A and the I, very consistent in this code, in this language that they use. So here you have the dates, though. So here we're talking about Kobe Bryant's fiery death, and it was described as an explosion in the sky. Didn't explode after it hit the ground. And this was preceded by a lot of predictive programming. In fact, there's a commercial where Kobe Bryant throws a basketball into a helicopter that explodes. So I'm just referencing here January 28th, 86, January 26th, 2020. Interesting timing. And of course, Kobe Bryant was buried in Corona Del Mar. And then Kobe, if you look it up, people were pointing this out early on, the crash seemed to coincide with COVID really taking off here. I mean, it wasn't declared a pandemic until March, but patient zero actually showed up in Seattle January 19th or 20th. 19th is when he came down with the sickness. Anyway, I'm just pointing it out here that someone has made this calculation. Now, one other thing. So Kobe Bryant's death was January 26th. Right before this, he was on a show called All That Smoke, a podcast. And I watched it. It was with Stephen Jackson. Stephen Jackson, the twin of George Floyd. And at the end of this, Stephen Jackson and Kobe Bryant exchange an obvious Masonic handshake. No coincidences here. Also noteworthy, in the month of August of 2020, in the middle of the summer of riots and everything else, you had Mamba Week. The NBA was commemorating Kobe Bryant's birthday, his 42nd birthday. So number 24, his 42nd birthday. And during that week, the MLB, for an unrelated reason, all had the number 42 on their jerseys. And this had to do with Jackie Robinson, number 42, who was played by Chadwick Boseman, who happened to be 42 and happened to die that week. And this was the week that, Kenosha went down and a few other things. But my point being, all of these characters were so interrelated. Just the fact that Stephen Jackson was the last person to talk to Kobe Bryant. And it goes deep, especially when you get into the timing of these riots. I think it's all coordinated. So when someone's going to say that they suspect something may go down on this date because it's related to this Kobe crash, I'm not too quick to dismiss it. But I do agree with P. Trippa, the whole counting and date gematria stuff doesn't make sense. Well, I don't know if anybody's... Well, actually I have seen some examples of people using gematria to make predictions on horse races and stuff. I mean, I was ready to place bets on the next Truther to die, and I was right, but we hadn't placed any bets yet. And I have a lead here. I hate to report on it, but it's been reported that Richie from Boston may be the next on the COVID hit list. Take a listen.
Yeah, Michelle, that's the unfortunate thing. Richie's, he's doing the best he can. He kind of mentioned how he's giving things away. His health is not the best. So you guys pray for Richie. He's, when he said that, I was like, wow, that's unfortunate. He kind of mentioned to me, I don't want to mention personal stuff, but you kind of mentioned to me as well. But I'm only saying that because he said it out loud. He said it in the video. That's why he said his health is not the best. He's giving away a lot of his equipment. He doesn't, I don't want to say this, but he's not sure how long he'll be around,
Okay, so I'm really questioning this whole idea that some people are able to somehow predict their deaths and that we should take this seriously. But yes, he is predicting his own death and his friend Russian Vids. So you got Richie from Boston and Russian Vids, who's now RV Truth, because he doesn't want people to know that he might be a Russian disinformation agent. At least that's the theory. Someone who didn't die, who should have, would be Jake Gibson, who asked people to cough on his face. I think I played that recently. He went to an event in Sacramento where it was the first anti-lockdown protest, where he had people cough in his face. And he's still alive. And he was recently in a debate with Fight the Flat Earth, who's one of these individuals who has an anti-flat Earth channel. And it turned into a shouting match. Jake Gibson, formerly known as Jake the Unmentionable, he had reverted to an 8-year-old playground bully. It got pretty ugly. Well, he's doubled down on it. And I almost don't want to play this. However, he found a clip where Fight the Flat Earth admits that he's not really a war veteran as he used to advertise. Now, I don't know why it matters that much, but Jake Gibson has seized upon this and added upon this is pretty bad. I'm going to play, I don't really want to play it, but it ends up with a whole lot of fat shaming. So this is the state of the biggest voices in the pro and anti-flat earth today. I'll go ahead and play about 10 seconds or less.
Gotcha, fat ass!
Oh, sorry. I'm so sorry. That's Jake Gibson. Anyway, I just have to report on it. You know, I'm just pointing this out. This exists. This is the fringe. Okay, let us continue. Flat Fact says, George's twin brother has a different surname. How do they explain that? Yeah, the whole thing about twins was crazy. You had Twin Cities, the twins, and then there's some other connections worth pointing out. This will actually underscore my point I made earlier about the fact that the cult that runs the world is obsessed with time and the sun, and they worship these things. Mercury was rising at 8:46 a.m. on September the 11th, 2001. That's the time that the first of the towers was hit. 8:46. George Floyd was kneeled upon for 8:46. Twin Cities. The sun set in the Twin Cities that day at 8:46. And the correlation here has to do with the ritualistic killing of the sun god at the setting of the sun. So the Lord of Darkness, or Set, Prince of Darkness, kills the sun god every day. The sun gives his life for us. Then he goes into the underworld, he gets put back together, and then he's reborn on the eastern horizon in the mornings. It's just a personification of the cycle of night and day, and it's encoded into a lot of these rituals. I mean, it's really that simple. But Derek Chauvin represented the dark side, the side that kills the Sun King, and George Floyd was then put into a golden casket, which, by the way, was paid for by Floyd Mayweather. And on the anniversary of the funeral, Mayweather was having that ridiculous show boxing, that boxing match. It was all for show, but it was with Logan Paul. I mean, such an unusual cast of characters. But my point is, the sun god is one you would expect to be dragged around in a golden casket, and 4 different funerals. Probably 4 different directions, but my point being, there's no reason to think that George Floyd actually died. And the story gets even deeper when you get into the use of symbolism. Like I said, the twins entering into Gemini Twin Cities. And then Stephen Jackson comes in with this twin narrative. And it was over a $20 bill, which if you really break that down, 20 means twin tens. And it's a counterfeit, another emphasis on the copy. We were talking about this event recently, and the names are very significant. Derek is a name of a infamous hangman who hanged 3,000. And he innovated something on the pulley system of the gallows, so that the cranes today actually have a part called the derrick. So Derek hanged 3,000. That's another 9/11 reference. They 9/11'd America. Chauvin, Western chauvinism. It was Western chauvinism that made it so George could not breathe. It's the oppression of capitalism and this whole dynamic. It's all explained in this Marxist versus capitalist dialectic they have set up here. I mean, BLM is in fact a Marxist organization, but at least that's what their role is. I think they're cannon fodder for a bigger plan. But my point is, the names here say it all. I mean, the media tried to minimize the fact that Floyd and Chauvin worked together for years. So that alone kind of stood out to me as worth noting. But look, he 9/11'd America. That was encoded into the story. In fact, if you go back and let's look at Rodney King, and you can find this on Wikipedia. The Rodney King beating took 1 minute and 19 seconds. So it's a reverse 9/11. And you could say that too. When I say 9/11, I mean it put us into a state of emergency. It fractured the country. And he was hit with batons 33 times. So if you get into the coding of it, the name King, 33, all very much significant. And then also the fact 119. Well, 30 years from that beating, they passed the George Floyd Act. And that was not a coincidence there, nor was it a coincidence that on 420, and the number 42 is always encoded into these events, like Stephen Jackson being 42, Floyd's drug dealer 42, it's all over these things. But on 420, they passed the verdict against Chauvin, and at Chauvin's trial, it had all the same coding, all the same numbers. But the timing of it with the sun is too precise. And it's not just the sun, there are planetary alignments. All right, let's go ahead and continue. I want to go through a list of things people shared to me today. This is a good one. And speaking about numbers, I think one of the foremost authorities on the topic of gematria would be Zachary Hubbard. And this is from Gematria Effect News. There's a new episode of CBS SWAT, Season 5, Episode 6, that was released on November the 12th. The title is Crisis Actor. And here's the description. When armed gunmen storm the set of a cable news show that promotes conspiracy theories, a team races to prevent a hostage situation from escalating on live TV. Now, what's fascinating about this is if you go into the backstory of Alex Jones, the story is he's Bill Hicks. And the way that it fits in is this. So Bill Hicks fakes his death. His producer is Kevin Booth. But before he dies, he hands a script over to Kevin Booth. A script about a very extreme Rush Limbaugh type who, at the end of his career, creates a situation where one of his fans comes in and kills him. Well, anyway, Bill Hicks dies. Enter Alex Jones, same producer, Kevin Booth. So now, fast forward to right now where we are, and I'm thinking, if Alex Jones is Bill Hicks and he is living out that script, then he's got to be exiting the scene any day now. And this story here is about an Alex Jones type.
Welcome back, True.
Being held at gunpoint, possibly killed. I don't know the episode. Let me go ahead and play a moment here. This is Gematria Effect News. And all of the links that I share, I post at my minds.com account. Okay, this is CBS's SWAT, episode Crisis Actor.
True Seeker, shout out to Joe Mo. He let me know that this past Friday, November 12th, what was the Superior General of the Jesuits' birthday, CBS, the all-seeing eye network, debuted their new episode of SWAT called Crisis Actor. Notice it was Season 5, Episode 6.
Okay, links in the Minds account. All right, let's go ahead and move forward. Another one. So the trailer was released today for Don't Look Up. Don't Look Up is about a comet coming down to destroy the Earth. And you have the Chicken Little, played by Leonardo DiCaprio, and nobody believes him.
This is not real. This is not...
Based on real events, this is not real. Kate, tell me this isn't happening. Anyway, it's about a large comet coming down to destroy the world. Leonardo DiCaprio and Jennifer Lawrence. Don't Look Up will be in theaters December the 10th. Now, this is interesting to me in that the outer limits, like outside of the world where we live, outside of the protective dome of our Space Force, you have these rocks flying around. You have comets. It's very dangerous out there. And it's kind of an interesting analogy with the idea of icebergs. And if you go out far enough, you could get taken out by an iceberg. The idea that the outer realms is just inherently dangerous. So here you have Leonardo DiCaprio, the face of the Titanic, about, of course, someone being taken out by an iceberg. And I kind of find this interesting that it's the same actor in a role, this time about something from above. Again, a threat from beyond. But again, it's more propaganda for Skyfall and the preparation for that event, whatever that's going to be, whether it's space junk or asteroids, whatever they decide to simulate into existence. Let me go ahead and go through comments here. Now, one of the reasons why I'm thinking that we may be